background with analytics. I mean, probably one of the most extensive that I've ever seen. And a lot of people come to me and ask me about things with analytics. Can we visualize this data? Can we see what's going on? Usually it's, hey, I need to know what the heck's going on with my company is usually the blanket statement. But Pedro has a background starting with MicroStrategy, or even had many jobs even before that, but MicroStrategy, Infor, Looker, then was a part of the acquisition with Looker, then Tableau. I mean, all the high level, basically the biggest names in the industry, and now has co-founded Wallaby AI, which is an awesome startup. We'll get into a little bit about that towards the end of the interview. But Pedro, stoked to have you, man. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Josh. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited about this.
Pedro, what should everyone stop doing when it comes to data and analytics?
It's a big question. Yeah. But in terms of providing value to the business, one of the big things we've seen is the challenge of delaying value because you want to try to get the data perfect, right? Let me share a scenario which I think will help illustrate this point. Imagine that you're a B2B marketing team at a product-led growth startup, and you need to make some decisions about where to best allocate your budget, right, for lead gen. So in order to do this, let's say that you specifically want to understand how much is it costing you to bring in an individual trial. And imagine that you run a lot of ads, so your spend data is in one system, Google Ads presumably. Your data about your trials is in your CRM because that's when you're tracking all your leads and opportunities. So what would you typically do to calculate that, and how long would it take?
Typically you'd set up reports, right? You'd build like a dashboard, and you'd have to work with your team to figure out even how to build a dashboard. And then, I mean, we're talking months, right? I don't know, weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple example, but you've described it perfectly, right? You're now sort of stuck, and this is like any scenario where you're unable to make a decision because you don't have access to the right data, or you don't have the ability to bring those different data sources into a place where you can use it. And this is the story of most teams, most marketing teams, where you depend on a data team. And what's the first thing that a data team is going to do? They're going to start this project that's going to begin with gathering requirements, and then they're going to design data models, and then they're going to want to build data pipelines, and then they're going to want to define business logic and semantic definitions. In the meantime, your business is continuing to move forward, right? You're still spending money to generate those trials, and you can't make a decision about how to optimize that workflow. This is how traditional data analytics has always worked. And there's this massive gap between the business teams who own the data, who run the business and need that data to make a decision, and the data teams who can provide that data to support those decisions. And we believe that needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I mean, just thinking about the idea of scoping the problem to then build a plan to then actually develop it. I mean, it's just such a long cycle. So what exactly do you mean by delaying value? You were mentioning that before. You were saying we delay value in the results and what we're looking for. So what do you mean by delaying value?
Data is an asset, right? In fact, nowadays, I would argue it's the most important asset that organizations have. And you want to get value from that asset. What's the most important value that you get from data? The ability to make decisions. Where to best spend your marketing budget? What target segments should you pursue with greater investment or greater energy? What content strategy makes the most sense? You're constantly, as a marketing professional, as a leader, expected to make these really important decisions. And because marketing is the heart of the organization when it comes to data, Everything flows through marketing because that's the entire customer journey goes through there, right? You've seen the MarTech landscape graphic. I think the latest one just came out today or this week. It's just a monster. So that's what I mean is delaying value is it's specifically in the case of data analytics, there are still a lot of, I'm going to call them outdated sort of models of preparing data and serving it to the business, often not at the speed at which the business needs to move, specifically at the speed at which they need to make decisions. You're still getting customers, you're still getting trials, you're still trying to close deals, and you're moving as fast as you can, but typically data doesn't move as fast as you need it to move.
Mm. Can you break down even more of these gaps between the business teams and the data teams, why that even exists?
Sure. I think if from an analytics perspective, you can think about where data analytics started and how that original approach has permeated into an era where it might the things that you used to do back then might not be as necessary. So I'll explain, data analytics back then was very much an IT owned and IT driven endeavor. You had these teams of experts that maintained all the data systems and had all the knowledge to bring data out of, in other industries, ERPs, or in our space, CRMs and marketing automation platforms into a data warehouse. And then on top of that data warehouse, they would create what's known as like the single version of the truth. I'm sure you've heard that expression before, right? And all of this prep work had to happen. Weeks or months and months of work had to happen before reports and dashboards were delivered to business users who needed those to understand what was happening with their business and presumably make some decisions with them, right? This idea of the single version of the truth, it has been really important in the history of analytics. The idea that there could only be a single answer to every question. It's a concept that is sacred in traditional analytics, right? And that idea has sort of created this gap where data teams really prioritize the curation of the data, and everything has to be clean and perfectly organized. Whereas the business is usually messy, right? Especially if you're a small, mid-sized organization, things are messy. You have to make decisions often with imperfect data, right? There is instinct associated with the decisions that you make. And that is what drives that really big gap between how the data teams think about data and how the business thinks about data, because the priorities are different. In one side, you're prioritizing accuracy, and in the other side, you're prioritizing speed.
That's such a good point. How long does this period typically wait? You're talking about accuracy and speed. I mean, how long does it typically wait a normal period?
It can genuinely be quarters, months or quarters. Back in the day, I had a client. She was on the business side. I forget her exact title, but she was a marketing leader. And we were having lunch one day, and she would say that anytime her team had a new request, a new question that needed another report, there were 2 windows in the year to make those requests. Can you imagine that? Now, I'm talking ancient history, right? The world has changed since then. I would be very surprised if that's still the case. But having to wait several weeks or a couple of months is not unheard of. Now, I do want to make the clarification, because I don't want people to think that I am discounting the importance of data accuracy, but it is important to distinguish the use cases. It is important to distinguish between, your operational data needs versus your analytical data needs. And when I say operational, what I mean is the data that feeds external facing use cases or external facing initiatives that marketing teams lead. So your segments, your nurture campaigns, your messaging, right? Data accuracy or hygiene is crucial here, because as a marketer, you don't want to send the wrong message to the wrong audience. You don't want to use the wrong email or recommend the wrong product. You don't want me to get an email that says, "Hello, Sarah, right? Notice you bought this product that I never bought." So, and this is the whole reason the data enrichment tools exist. You want to make sure that you know as much as you can about your customer that you're talking to. But analytics is very different. Analytics is not an operational effort. In analytics, you make decisions in the aggregate, right? Rarely do you make a decision for a specific contact. But the analytics space and data teams haven't really made that distinction. We've sort of established this standard of certainty and accuracy that is impractical today and frankly unrealistic. And I'll give you an example. We use our analytics in our business. We are customer zero for our product Wallaby, and we have a weekly go-to-market ops meeting that we run it using Wallaby. And one of the things that we were analyzing last week was our ad click-through rate, right? And calculating our ad click-through rate, we were doing that. We were getting a couple of different results depending on how we were asking the question. Was it 11%? Was it 12%? Right? There was a lack of certainty there. And the question was, are we going to make a significantly different decision for our business if the number is 11% or 12% or 13%, right? And so the point is that in order to get to certainty, you need an extraordinary amount of effort. Back to your original question, weeks and weeks or months and months of time, right? Is it really worth it for every single decision that marketing teams need to make? The answer is often no, right?
Yeah.
And marketing,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and marketing, you need to move fast. You need to respond to what your audience is doing, and traditional analytics just has not been built to support that.
That makes a ton of sense. I know a lot of people, I tend to love military analogies, and you think of like black ops teams or whatever, and you'll hear like sometimes marketers will say, "Oh yeah, we've got our black ops team doing this." And if you think about when you're on a mission, sometimes it's just snapshots of intel, but those snapshots can be the difference between a successful mission or a very unsuccessful one, just because all of a sudden you realize, oh, the intel we thought was actually slightly different, or nope, we're on track. It's pretty much the same of what we figured out. But the key is it sounds like what you're saying, the key is like how quickly we can get that intel and how quickly we can make actions from it, not necessarily always how like minute accurate it is.
Yeah, 100%. I need to introduce you to my co-founder, Jonathan. He's former military. He was in the Army.
Oh, cool.
So all of these analogies.
He lived this.
He's lived this, and he's essentially our GTM point person. So he owns our go-to-market, our marketing. So he's the one that's living all of these challenges. And what you described is exactly right. There is no business leader in the world that has ever made a decision based on 100% certainty. There's always a degree of uncertainty in our decisions, and there is instinct that's also required. But it's almost like with analytics, we try to eliminate instinct from our decision-making process, and that's just not natural.
What a good quote. We eliminate instinct in our decision-making process with analytics. That's so true. How would you define this perfection trap that people fall into with data?
The perfection trap. What a great quote. I think the trap is that we want to apply perfection where it's not needed, right? So I'll share an example of where it is needed. If take decisions about somebody's compensation, right? Or somebody's job. You want certainty there. You want absolute certainty. You're managing a sales team, and at the end of the quarter, you're calculating bonuses and commissions. Certainty is necessary there. But that's the world of finance, right? It's not generally the world of marketing, at least from an analytics perspective. So I think the trap is that trying to apply that very high degree or benchmark of certainty in use cases where it's not needed. So I think the key there is to understand, right? If I'm getting a different result here, slightly different result, am I really going to make a significantly different decision based on the two numbers, right? And if the answer is no, then that probably is a good sign that, oh, that level of certainty that I'm looking for is impractical in this scenario. And the priority is to move fast. I need to move fast. Yeah.
Why do you think everyone's stuck in this outdated approach?
I can speak for my industry, the data nerds. I think it's because it's the world that we live in. I'm going to make a statement that is going to sound perhaps harsh or critical of my own industry, but I think it's true. For all of the claims of this industry of wanting to democratize data and serve business users, the reality is that we've continued to build tools for data professionals, for data analysts, for data engineers. It is the world that we come from. It is the world that we know. And in that world, that mentality of the perfectly curated data model semantic layer still prevails, right? It is once you step outside of that world, which we've tried to do over the past couple of years, that you realize there are things that businesses prioritize often more than 100% accuracy. Speed is one of them. Independence is another. The ability to be empowered so that your marketing team or sales team or product management team can make decisions on their own without having to rely on a team of data experts. That's also prioritized highly. But I think that's where that comes from.
What should companies do instead of waiting on perfect data? What should they do?
I think it starts with identifying your key business use cases, identifying what you need for operational use cases versus analytical use cases, and what the goals are there. As I said earlier, if you're trying to make sure you have the right data for the campaigns you're executing, by all means, you have a higher standard of certainty and accuracy that's needed there. But for analytics, really what you're trying to get to do is you're trying to get a sense of what's happening in the business and why. And the priority there should be to prioritize access to data. Because even if the data is messy, and that's a subjective term, we can debate what's the right level of messiness. But even if the data is messy, I find that even by having access to that data, it's easier to surface where the gaps are or where the data problems might be. Because if, for example, if we're running our go-to-market operations meeting and we see that our click-through rates are 80%, it's like, okay, there's something wrong there, right? That just, again, that's the instinct piece of it. There's something wrong there. Let's look at it, and we can go in and understand where is that bad data coming from. But I'd rather, I see our customers that we talk to telling us that they'd rather work in that model than I'm going to wait for my team to spend weeks or months building this so that we get the number perfectly correct. Which, by the way, even when they think they do, you don't even trust it anyway. It's like, is this really right?
True.
So I think that the message is embrace the imperfection to some degree, knowing that speed is in the long run going to be better.
How does AI fundamentally change the possibilities of data analysis?
It's a really exciting time right now, because AI does make a lot of things obsolete. So the big gap in analytics has always been that business leaders speak the language of business and not the language of data, right? What does that mean? I'll give you an example because I'm a big data nerd, so I'm very fluent in the language of data, right? This is what it sounds like when you're speaking the language of data. Show me a scatter plot of average opportunity size by average company revenue for deals in this specific vertical over the last 90 days. So do you know a CMO who speaks that way? No, right? There is no marketing leader on the planet who speaks that way. And yet, go look at the demos that analytics vendors are putting out there, where they're showing their AI capabilities, and that's what they show. That's precisely what they show, right? Because again, that is the world that we've lived in. Analytics is a highly structured world. The language of analytics is SQL, which has the word structured in its name. AI, specifically generative AI, is highly unstructured, right? So trying to bring together the unstructured nature of generative AI with a highly structured world of analytics is hard. And the key insight there is understanding that marketing leaders, business leaders in general, they speak differently. They express their intentions differently, right? We need to forget this assumption that people are capable of expressing our goals and our intentions clearly and in a highly structured manner, because that's not the world we live in. That is precisely why data analysts and data teams exist, by the way. Data analysts have a job because they are capable of interpreting the intentions of your CMO, of the business user, and then translating it into a highly structured SQL query. So I can use an example here. I'll use an example with movies. Imagine you have a data set of Netflix movie titles, right? And you ask for a list of French films. So let me do this exercise with you. Imagine that you're the data analyst. Sure. What is the next step you would take?
All films that have French original languages or something like that. French is the original language.
Right. So there you made an interpretation. That's what a data analyst does. My user, my business user, my stakeholder wants French films, and I'm going to interpret that to mean French language films. They never said French language, right? What if they meant, I want films that were produced in France, or I want films that were directed by a French director, right? That's the value that a data analyst brings is you're a translator between the language of business and the language of data. But now we can use AI to do this. Generative AI brings this extraordinary capability to reason and become that translator between the business world and the data world. And what this means for us is it gives us an opportunity for the first time to now truly democratize analytics across entire organizations. Because all of a sudden you have these business to data translators that scale in a way that humans just don't, right? So the amount of people in an organization that can benefit from this AI translator is much, much larger. And unfortunately, what you see a lot out there are still analytics vendors that are using AI in the wrong way. And really their concept of AI is, I'm going to put a chat bot on top of the data but they still need that data team or that data expert to build the underlying data models, the semantic definitions behind the scenes. And again, in all this time, the business is getting zero value, which is just because we're still perpetuating that old model. The AI gives us the opportunity to think about analytics in a completely new way. And I think that's really exciting.
I know you didn't say this, but I'll say it. I actually had a meeting just earlier, and one of my colleagues said, he goes, man, this whole HubSpot AI reporting tool is absolute crap. He's like, this thing sucks. I'm trying to put it in. I'm trying to get my reports. And I was chuckling because I knew we were going to have our call. And I'm like, well, that's actually why Wallaby exists. Well, not why Wallaby exists, but that's why HubSpot's been a great partner for you guys. It's because, yeah, it seems like the approach is we're data people. Let's apply AI to making the process that we've already been doing forever work easier by trying to add a AI wrapper on this. And basically now it's like AI-ified versus rethinking it completely. Because even to your example about the French films, I brought in my own bias to that by saying probably all directors have the original language in French, which may not even be accurate, but AI would at least come with a slightly less biased approach to say, well, hey, these are probably what I think you're asking. Here's the basic answer. Is that correct? I mean, is that kind of what you're seeing?
It is, and you've nailed it. There's so much to unpack there. Because like you said, AI really should motivate us to transform the way we've traditionally thought about analytics, right? When automobiles were invented, right? You didn't see people stick their foot out trying to push the car, right? Because like you would pedal a bicycle, right? There's a new way of doing things, and there's this disappointing lack of vision or creativity that I see throughout the industry, where the default move has been, let's just take generative AI and put an LLM chatbot on top of our data and have people chat with the data. And it sounds great because, many people use ChatGPT nowadays, and it's very helpful. I use ChatGPT, Perplexity, those tools every single day, right? But the reason that doesn't work for analytics is because analytics is a very different endeavor. Like I said earlier, the problem is the fact that LLMs are so unstructured and analytics is so highly structured. So a chatbot is not the experience that brings those worlds together. It just perpetuates the unstructured nature of it, right? I'm going to get really geeky now, but if you have listeners that are into this, there is this set of research out of Stanford University called the Gulf of Envisioning. And, if you have listeners that are into it and don't have anything better to do on an afternoon or a weekend and they want to read that paper, I highly recommend it. It dives into the cognitive challenges that all of us face when trying to express our intentions in the form of effective prompts for LLMs. It's a real problem that the chatbot by itself is not the solution for solving the problem of democratizing analytics. It's part of it, for sure. There has to be some sort of chatty component to it, but that sort of just chat thread by itself is not it. And I think what that means is we have to be better as analytics vendors and software developers. We have to be better and expect more of ourselves and realize that what we have here is the opportunity to invent a new language, not bolt on this new technology to methodologies and paradigms that have existed for 35 plus years.
That's so interesting. Where can we find more for those of us that want to geek out over this? You said Gulf of Envisioning, is that correct?
The Gulf of Envisioning, yeah, that's the name of the research paper. And then if you want to look for real life examples of how companies are taking advantage of AI, this is this goes beyond how the technology is being employed, but rather the real business value that companies are driving from it. I really like uh, guiding people to the AI native leaderboard. So if you Google the AI native leaderboard, you're going to come to this website where this person, and I should know the person's name. It's disrespectful that I don't know this because I quote this, I mention this website all the time. But you'll find all the information about who maintains it there. Anyway, the AI native leaderboard is a list, an active list that's being actively maintained of companies that are achieving remarkable levels of growth. I'm talking.
For those who can see the screen, is this what we're talking about?
That's the one. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Thank you for bringing that up. And it keeps being actively maintained, and more companies are being added to that leaderboard. There's a criteria to be part of this leaderboard, and that criteria, in very broad terms, is you have to be a company that is demonstrating remarkable levels of growth, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, with dramatically small teams. Like, you can see some examples there. If you go back up to the list, you can see a company there like Mercor. So Mercor, for those who don't know, is an AI recruiting software company. So they use their customers use their software to automate resume screening. They do candidate matching. They even have the AI do 20-minute AI-powered interviews, right?
That's cool.
There's a whole other debate about whether that's the right or wrong thing to do. Like, do you want to have AI making hiring decisions? We can have that debate at a later time. But the point is that look at the success that this company's having. Yeah, they're a couple of years old. They're already at $75 million in revenue, right? So nice. Like, normally in pre-AI times, how big would you expect a company of that size to be? Like maybe 200 employees, maybe.
Massive. Yeah, at least.
And look at what they have. They have 30 people on their team. Just think about that, right? So these are the message that this leaderboard gives us, is that companies have found a new way to grow. The model for scaling has completely changed with AI, right? Mm-hmm. We aspire at Wallaby. We aspire to be one of these companies ourselves. We use AI native tools everywhere we can. We use Cursor for engineering. We use Intercom for customer support. We use AI tools for design. Of course, we're customers here at Wallaby. We use Wallaby for analytics. What this means for businesses is, and business leaders in particular, is sort of changing that mindset that growing and scaling automatically means these large capital expenditures and expansive teams. That's changed. And the companies that you don't have to be a startup to be able to do that, right? On this leaderboard, you have mostly startups, but even large companies can sort of change the way that they scale a function, build out a new organization. And for us, for the world of analytics, what it means that the traditional data stack is obsolete now, or is about to become obsolete, because companies that choose to grow this way are not going to choose tools that require armies of experts to implement them and support them and run them, right? So yes, AI has dramatically changed the way that businesses are growing, and that has serious implications for the analytics world.
These are great examples. What results should people expect when they embrace this approach?
Productivity is probably number one. I can share Wallaby as an example. So we've built Wallaby, and it's still a maturing product. There are more and more things we need to do, but it is a working product now with paying customers that's solving real problems. And it's a product that we build essentially with a couple of software engineers in a matter of a few months, right? I think back to my old company where all of our team comes from. That's where we all met. And when we were building or trying to build AI powered capabilities, we needed a team of 25 to 30 engineers. It took months and months and months of work to try to build something that's not at the level that Wallaby does, right? And I'd love to say that it's because we're so smart. I know my co-founders are. I won't put myself in that category, but largely it is because we have all this technology available to us now, and the need for expert specialization in certain areas has changed. You can do a lot more with generalists. So, as a very small company, and as a growing startup, being able to get to a position where we can compete against larger, more established players, despite our size, is wonderful. So I think that that's the main result, is that it levels the playing field. If you're a smaller team or if you're a smaller company, this kind of AI native approach really helps you level the playing field so that you can become a legitimate competitor against companies that are much larger and more well-funded than you might be.
I'm so excited to learn more about the whole vibe coding and everything. I started dabbling a little bit myself, and it was crazy to see an idea become a prototype in between us and whoever else is listening in a lunch break. Like,
Yeah.
people realized that, because I showed this thing and they were like, "Who developed that for you?" That was the first question I got. And these were some pretty smart machine learning guys too that I was showing this to, and I was like, "I did, just using Claude," and it was like, what? And even me, I was dumbfounded the first time I tried it. But having people that actually know what they're doing and can develop and move quickly, that's so encouraging. Like, what a fun time to be launching tech.
It is, because I also think it lowers the barrier to entry, right? Like you no longer have to be a super expert coder to build something of value. And again, I don't want to diminish the value of software engineers that are solving really complex problems. We have two wonderful software engineers, including my co-founder and chief technology officer, who can take advantage of vibe coding, but also know the right way to approach it, right? But the point is that this whole vibe movement is now spreading beyond coding. So I was at a conference last week, and where I heard the term vibe marketing for the first time. We've talked about internally about the idea of vibe analytics, right? Now, you may like or dislike the term. That's not really what matters. Terms go in and out of style. But I do think that what's behind it is important, because whatever we call it, vibe or something else, I think the general idea is that AI does not have to replace you. It does not, because it does not have to do the whole thing for you, right? If you're using Cursor, which is like the tool du jour right now for vibe coding, Cursor doesn't do the whole thing for you. You still need knowledgeable people there that can understand what's happening and can really do the job and complete it. But the whole point is it takes you a significant part of the way there. And that approach of, hey, I don't need you to give me the whole answer, but just help me get started. Don't help me not start from zero, right? I think that's what's changing. And I think you're going to see that in a lot of different industries and functions, not just engineering, but you'll see it in marketing. And as we think about it, I think that's really where I see analytics headed and what we're trying to do with Wallaby. Hey, let's create this sort of vibe analytics approach where the AI, again, maybe it doesn't give you the 100% correct answer or the full answer you need, but it gets you enough along the way in the analytics journey that it's easier for you to get to that answer.
For someone hearing about this for the first time, what's one step to take action?
think number one, I always start with the business use case, because you want to know what you're solving for, right? So understand what particular business problem you're trying to solve before you go and explore all these AI tools, because there's so many of them, right? Are you trying to solve for content creation, sales funnel optimization, customer outreach, analytics, like you name it, right? Understand what is going to move the needle the most for your business. And then the next step is start getting your feet wet. There are just a lot of tools out there where you're going to need to do some research and try it out. There are ways to do that where you can also lean on existing groups. So I won't mention one in particular, but I'm happy to share the information with you, Josh, afterwards, if you think it would be helpful for your listeners. Marketing professionals communities that I'm a part of that are organizing, webinars and like lunch and learns and hands-on workshops. There's one here in San Diego this Friday morning that I'm going to, which is a marketing operations leader is going to walk the group, me included, I'm going to be a part of this, into building our own chatbot, right?
Oh, fun. That's cool.
Right. So the tools are out there, the resources are out there, the communities that are trying to help marketers and business people take advantage of these new AI native technologies are out there. And I think that's just a great resource to really become immersed in this world and understand what's possible for your own business.
How could someone easily get this wrong in just the AI space? It feels like you just type in AI and now you're just inundated from then on with every new startup every day that's coming out. So how could someone get it wrong in this noisy AI market?
Well, we've seen several really bad problems with being completely dependent on AI tools. We even, I won't mention names, but we even tried a couple of AI native outbound tools, right? And we didn't have any horror stories, but you read horror stories about the AI delivering a message that is just completely wrong, or maybe even just completely inappropriate for the situation that person is dealing with, right? Maybe they're going through a rough moment in life, and just the AI is completely just inappropriate in that sense. So I think that we're still not at the point, and I don't know that we will be, that you can 100% trust the AI to do everything, which goes back to our previous conversation where maybe that's not the role that AI ends up taking, right? And our fears about AI replacing us maybe have been overstated. Maybe the role that AI is taking is to be a facilitator, to do a lot of that groundwork for you before you take over and then bring it across the finish line, right? So I think that that's the right perspective to take, rather than, oh, here's the thing that's going to do my job for me. I just have to click a button and then let everything happen and I don't have to worry about it. Maybe we'll get there at some point, but I don't think we're there yet.
Can you give us a specific example? I know we're running up on time here, but you were given such a great example about how you analyze your pipeline. And I know for a lot of us, whether you're on the sales side, whether you're on the marketing side, or CS or any other role inside the company, because pipeline is basically the lifeblood of what's going on. How do you analyze pipeline? You had an example of how you analyze pipeline. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah. There's a lot of things that you might want to do with your pipeline, right? You might want to analyze sales velocity. You might want to analyze conversion rates. You might want to analyze closed won loss reasons. Fundamentally, it starts with your data. What is the information? What is the data that you are keeping track of in your opportunities? You're probably storing it in a CRM. You're probably tracking it in some CRMs. We use HubSpot ourselves. I think a lot of your listeners use HubSpot. So we've been HubSpot users for a long time since we started the company. And we track the different stages of the pipeline. And at the end of the day, it comes down to what are the things that you need to track? And then are you able to understand why they're happening? The sort of the surface level analytics is just the ability to track KPIs. I know my conversion rates from MQLs to SQLs is just whatever percentage, right? And you're tracking that, and all of a sudden it drops. Do you know why? Right? So that's when you go into second level, and that's where you run into issues. With traditional approaches, it's really hard to understand why. Traditional approaches just give you the dashboard that you're tracking. You say, "Oh no, my conversion rates are falling. Why is that happening?" That's the next logical question you have, is why is it happening? And it's really hard to answer that if you're using just the reporting and analytics that comes in the CRM by default. Mm-hmm. That's why we're building a tool like Wallaby, right? Because what you want to know is, are my conversion rates dropping because of a particular territory, or in a particular vertical, or a particular segment size? Or is there one campaign that's dragging everything down? Or is it a sales rep maybe who's not being as effective? Mm-hmm. All of these associated attributes that are part of the opportunity that you're tracking are things that you can analyze. But it's really hard to try to analyze if you just have like this huge table of data spreadsheet and you're trying to connect the dots. Humans are sometimes it can be hard if you have a lot of data. That's where AI really shines. AI is really good at connecting those dots and surfacing those learnings that might not have been obvious to you at first glance, right? So there's a lot of things I think that you can do with pipeline analysis, but I think that the key thing to know is that once you are able to track what is happening, you want to go down to that lower level of detail, understand why are things happening, because that information is what allows you to make a decision that actually impacts your business. Just knowing that that something's wrong or conversion rates are dropping is not enough. You need to know why, and that's where you can actually make a decision.
What's one piece of advice you'd pass on to listeners that are looking to transform their approach to data?
I'll be really cheeky and say, sign up for a Wallaby trial.
Sounds like a great next step.
Yeah. But I think the thing that I would emphasize the most is that we are no longer in a world where a small or mid-size marketing team that doesn't really have that in-house expertise. You don't have a data scientist on staff. You don't have a data team. Your budgets are constrained, so you're not going to spend a lot of money on those big analytics vendors and the professional services consultants that you need. I think it's important for those types of teams to understand that you have more options now. We're no longer in a world where the only option you have is, I gotta dump data in a spreadsheet and try to figure things out there, or just depend on whatever reports I get from Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever I'm using, right? AI has really changed things. Of course, I'm always going to recommend Wallaby, but there are a number of products out there that are trying to make things easier for these smaller teams that want to be more independent, that want to be more empowered, and really want to own their analytics journey without having to depend on a team of experts.
That's great. Pedro, for those who want to connect and keep talking more, I know LinkedIn is a great place to contact you. Where else can they contact you and learn more about your work and Wallaby?
So our website is wallaby.ai. You can learn more about the product. You can reach out to us via the website. And of course, on LinkedIn, we have a company page and have a personal page. I am delighted to make new connections, especially in this community. So if you reach out, please, just say that you listen to the podcast, and I'll be delighted to connect and chat with you all.
Awesome, Pedro. Thanks so much. This was a faster. We could have kept going. I know we went over on time, but I appreciate you coming on and just dropping your knowledge. It was so helpful.
It was my pleasure, Josh. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for the opportunity to share some perspectives and talk about Wallaby. I really appreciate you inviting me on your program. And yeah, thank you very much.